This week's topic is especially for small group leaders in the church, and we're going to talk about the strategic role of small groups in a discipleship culture. If you're trying to create a church where everyone is a disciple making disciples, which is the church that Jesus envisioned, well, then small groups are probably going to play an important role in this. And we see this in Matthew chapter 9. Jesus, it says, was teaching in the synagogues. He was announcing the good news. So he was out there preaching and doing his public ministry, which is really what a lot of our churches do. And for many of our churches, it just stops there. But it's interesting because in verse 36, it says that when Jesus saw the crowds, he had compassion on them because they were confused and helpless like sheep without a shepherd. So this passage shows us that even Jesus understood that sermons weren't enough. If they were, he wouldn't have had compassion on the people. He would have sent them home and felt pretty good about himself. But he knew that there was more to it. You know, the church, the ministry, the public ministry that he envisioned was more than just preaching. In fact, if you read on here, Jesus turns to his disciples and he said, "Pray to the Lord of the harvest to send those shepherds, because these poor people need shepherds." And then in the next chapter, in Matthew chapter 10, Jesus sent out his disciples. He said, "Hey, you guys are God's answer to prayer." And he sent them out into the field. Here's the point. Sermons are important, but people need a shepherd to really apply the truth in their everyday lives. I know this is true for me. There have been many times in church when I listened to a message and it just really struck me. And I knew that I had to do something about it, but I go home and pretty soon I get busy with everyday life. I never talk about it with a friend. I don't go to a small group and unpack it some more. So the seed that could have really grown in my own heart, in my own life, in my spiritual walk, that seed falls on, well, in essence, on shallow ground, on rocky ground, and it never really bears fruit. Think about it in terms of this really simple image. One person preaching to the masses. This is what Jesus was doing in Matthew 9. There were thousands of people there. It doesn't matter how great the sermon is. Jesus's sermon was great, probably better than any sermon you've ever heard before, and it still wasn't enough. And in your church, a preacher preaching to a bunch of people and then those people going home, it's just not enough. And that's where small groups can come in, because small groups are places where people can have a shepherd. Small groups are the environments where people can gather together and unpack what they're learning, and not just what they're learning in the sermons, but other topics on faith and life and leadership and ministry. Those huddles can change your whole church. So small groups strategically allow everyone to have a pastor, right? If your church is even 100 people strong, there's no way that pastor, one pastor, can truly shepherd every one of those 100 people. This is the lesson that Moses learned in Exodus 18. He took his seat to hear the people's disputes against each other, and it says that they waited before him from morning till evening. And so his father-in-law, Jethro, said, "What are you really accomplishing here? Why are you trying to do all this all by yourself while everyone just stands around and watches you do all the work?" Isn't this a picture of so many churches? We go to church and we watch one pastor do all of the work. Remember, Jesus wasn't satisfied with that in Matthew 9. He wasn't satisfied with people watching him do all the preaching. He wanted to connect them to shepherds, and that's what Jethro's getting at too. He went on and said, "This is not good. You're going to wear yourself out, and the people too. This job is too heavy a burden for you to handle all by yourself." It's interesting because Jethro makes this observation. It doesn't just wear out a pastor to have a church culture like this, but it actually wears the people out too, because they're not being ministered to. And that's why Jesus said he wanted shepherds to go out. So look at Jethro's logistical genius. He said, "Find some leaders and appoint them over groups of 1,000, 100, 50, and 10. See, look, he's showing us an org chart here. And this is really what small groups provide. They allow us to divide and conquer. Small groups give us that strategic advantage in the church. And there's one more thing. Small groups provide an environment for people to go full circle in their faith. And remember, that's the win. We're trying to help people pursue God and go full circle. So again, that means that in a small group, you can help people trust Jesus and honor God. And it's all about the topics that you're choosing. You can choose topics around faith and topics around everyday life and choices. We'll get more into how to actually run a small group using the Pursue God tools in later lessons. But I want you to see this third thing. Small groups are a place where people can learn how to help other people pursue God. And the reason for this is that you are modeling the mentoring method, the disciple-making method every time you have a small group meeting. You're picking a topic, you're investing in that group around that topic, you're sparking that conversation, you're helping them discover the truth, you're doing it in a relational environment. See, all of this is modeling disciple-making. So you are showing them how to help someone else by helping them. And that's why small groups run the right way are so critical for creating a discipleship culture in your church.